In this lesson, you're going to learn all about enterprise value versus equity value and why we need to look at both of these numbers when we're deciding on the overall value of a company. Now, in the previous lessons in this course, we learned about equity value and how we calculate it taking into account options and other dilutive securities such as convertibles. So we have that in place. And what I want to go into now is how we go from here, from equity value down to enterprise value. And I want to show you an example in the real world of why we need to look at both these numbers and why enterprise value can often give us a more accurate picture of what a company is actually worth. So the analogy that I like to use here in the real world is buying a house. Now, if you're going around and you're looking at real estate and you're trying to decide on a good house or a good property to buy, the first and most obvious thing you're going to notice is the price. It's normally listed on the sign, it's easily and readily accessible. So in our example, let's just go with $500,000 for the price of a house. So we're buying a house, we see the list price is $500,000 here. And this list price, just enter it right here, this is sort of like the equity value. Because when we go on Google Finance or Yahoo Finance and we look at the value of a company, the equity value or the diluted equity value is what we're going to get. It's the simplest and easiest way to calculate the value of a company. The problem though is that it doesn't really tell us the whole picture. So going back to the house analogy right here. So when we buy a house, let's say we're buying it for $500,000. So that's all well and good, but the fact is we have some other expenses and other things that we need to take into account once we've actually purchased this house. So for one thing, when we buy it, let's say that we find out that the roof is broken or that the floors are broken or that the support for the house needs repairs. So there are repairs required, which means that after we buy it, we're going to have to invest something additional in the house to fix it up and make sure we can actually live there. So let's say that it costs $20,000 to make these repairs. And in addition to that, we also find out that the previous owners of the house have some unpaid bills and obligations. So in this case, let's just go with an assumption of $10,000 for this. So let's say they have a lot of utility bills or other bills related to the real estate or the property or to actually living in the house, taxes, anything like that that's unpaid that the new owner, us, we have to pay. So I'll enter unpaid bills obligations here. So these are both working against us. But when we sign up and we buy the house, we also figure out that there's actually something working in our favor. And that's that in addition to this house, it also comes fully furnished with furniture. And in addition to actually being able to use this furniture, we could hypothetically go and sell it. We could go out and post an ad for it online or solicit buyers for the furniture or somehow sell it through other means. So we're going to say this furniture is worth $10,000. So in short, we have these two items working against us, adding up to around $30,000 total, and then we also have the $10,000 from the furniture helping us because this has value, we're getting it for free, and we can actually go and resell this to other parties now. So if you think about what happens here, what the true cost to actually buy this house is, we start with the $500,000, then we add $20,000 for repairs because we certainly need to pay for that, and then we add this $10,000 for unpaid bills and obligations because we certainly need to pay that, and then we subtract the furniture right here because we're getting that, and we could hypothetically just go out and sell that because it came along with the house for free. So we see that the true cost of the house here is $520,000. So I'll enter true cost right here. And the true cost to buy the house is sort of like the enterprise value. And the enterprise value, as you've probably surmised by now, corresponds to how much a company costs to acquire once you've taken into account its obligations that need to be repaid, any debt that needs to be repaid, anything that needs to be paid back to investors or anyone else who has loaned the company money. And then it also takes into account any type of cash or investments or anything like that that you're getting that is worth money, that's liquid, that can be sold relatively easily. So in our analogy, the repairs and unpaid bills and obligations here represent debt and other obligations. and the furniture here would represent cash and investments. And so that's the basic idea behind enterprise value and equity value. And you can see, going back to what we have here, that we are sort of reflecting this exact analogy, because to go from equity value to enterprise value here, to go from the list price of this company to how much it would actually cost to acquire, we are subtracting cash because we're getting that for free. Cash and investments we're basically getting for free when we buy this company because it comes along with our balance sheet. But we're also adding debt, minority interest, preferred stock, and other liabilities to this. And that's because the debt typically needs to be repaid whenever we acquire a company. The minority interest, we have to add it to enterprise value because sometimes we buy out the company's minority interest in other companies. And also, just to do an apples to apples comparison, we need to add it to the enterprise value. The preferred stock, similarly, preferred stock is sort of like debt, and we have to pay back the preferred stock to the preferred stock investors when we acquire this company. And then other liabilities, this would represent things like pensions, environmental liabilities, capitalized leases, things of that nature that also will have to be repaid at some point in the future because they're more like debt, more like obligations that are on the company's balance sheet, which are incurring some kind of expense over time and which need to be repaid to a certain party. So that's how we get to enterprise value. We take whatever we get for free with the company that we can sell or which represents liquid cash value, and then we add in any types of obligations that need to be repaid when and if we actually acquire this company. And that takes us to enterprise value right here. So that's how I think about equity value versus enterprise value in the real world, just going through this analogy of buying a house and looking at the list price and then looking at all these other factors to get to the true cost or the enterprise value of this house. So that's how you should think about equity value versus enterprise value. Now that we've been through that exercise, in the next video I want to go a step further and I'm going to show you how to actually calculate enterprise value for Apple using information found on our financial statement projections right here, as well as what we can find from their filings.